No one chooses her. The words echoed through the Silverpine Pack Hall, and Elena Whitmore felt every pair of eyes turn against her. She stood beneath the ancient stone pillars, wearing a simple blue dress, while the most powerful wolves in the kingdom decided her future like she wasn't even there. "The arrangement is final," the elder announced. "Elena Whitmore will join the Ashvale bloodline and fulfill her duty as an Omega." She looked around the room, searching for even one person who would ask what she wanted. Nobody did. For years, Elena had been the quiet Omega everyone overlooked. She healed injured pack members, helped prepare medicines, and remembered the names of people who never remembered hers. But kindness had never given her a voice in Silverpine. Tonight, she finally understood the truth. They didn't see her as a person. They saw her as a piece on a political board. "I accept my place," Elena whispered. But inside, something in her broke. Hours later, while the pack celebrated their perfect alliance, Elena walked away from the only home she had ever known. She left behind the lights, the promises, and the future chosen for her. She ran toward the Silverpine Forest, a place every Omega was warned never to enter after sunset. The trees were older than the pack itself. The path disappeared beneath the snow. The cold air burned against her face, but for the first time in years, Elena felt like she could breathe. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she couldn't return. What Elena didn't know was that someone else was already inside the forest. Someone who never walked those paths without a reason. Alpha King Adrian Blackthorn had spent the entire evening investigating whispers of betrayal among the northern packs. The ruler of the Northern Crescent Alliance was known as a man who carried the weight of an entire kingdom on his shoulders. Calm, unreachable, impossible to surprise. Until that night. The moment Adrian saw Elena standing beneath the moonlight, something changed. His wolf, usually silent and controlled, reacted with a warning he had never felt before. Not anger, not danger, recognition. Adrian stepped forward slowly. "You know this forest belongs to the king's territory, don't you?" Elena turned, startled by the stranger's voice. She expected arrogance. Another alpha who would tell her what to do. Instead, she saw a man watching her with something she had never received from powerful people before. Respect. "Then I suppose you'll send me back," she said quietly. Adrian studied her expression. The fear was there, but beneath it was something stronger. Determination. "Who are you running from?" he asked. Elena looked away. She wasn't ready to tell him about the arranged bond, the humiliation, or the life she escaped. She didn't know this stranger was the Alpha King. She didn't know the man standing in front of her had the power to change everything. And Adrian didn't know that the Omega he found alone in the forest was connected to a secret his kingdom had buried for generations. Under the silver moon, two paths crossed. One woman searching for freedom. One king who had forgotten what it felt like to choose anything for himself. Neither of them knew their meeting would challenge every rule their world was built upon. Elena had spent her entire life learning one rule inside the Silverpine Pack: never challenge an alpha. Yet standing in the middle of the ancient forest, facing a stranger whose presence seemed to command the entire world around him, she found herself doing exactly that. "I am not going back," Elena said. Her voice was quiet, but there was no hesitation behind it. Adrian Blackthorn watched her carefully. Most people lowered their eyes when they spoke to him. They chose every word because they feared making a mistake in front of the Alpha King. Elena did the opposite. She looked exhausted, cold, and uncertain, but she still stood her ground. That caught his attention more than anything else. "You do not even know where you are," Adrian said. "The nearest road is several miles away. The temperature will drop below freezing before morning." Elena wrapped her arms around herself, refusing to show how much the cold had already affected her. "I will figure it out." For some reason, Adrian almost smiled. Almost. It was not because her situation was amusing. It was because he had not heard someone speak to him with that much honesty in years. His guards, his advisors, and even other alpha leaders always approached him with careful words and hidden intentions. But this Omega had walked into his forest alone and challenged the ruler of the entire Northern Crescent Alliance without knowing his name. "What is your name?" Adrian asked. Elena hesitated. Giving her name meant giving away a piece of herself. But something about his calm voice made her answer. "Elena Whitmore." The moment she spoke, Adrian felt that strange pull again. A feeling he could not explain. His wolf, usually controlled by years of discipline, reacted to her presence. It was not a command. It was not possession. It was recognition. Adrian looked away for a brief second, hiding his reaction. He had spent his entire life preparing to lead. He knew the laws of pack hierarchy. He knew the traditions surrounding mates. He knew every political danger that came with personal choices. But he had never expected to feel something he could not simply order away. Elena noticed his expression change. "What?" she asked. "Do you know me?" Adrian looked back at her. No, it was the truth. He did not know her. Not yet. But he knew there was more to her story. Before he could ask another question, a distant howl echoed through the trees. Elena immediately became tense. Adrian noticed. Not because she was afraid of the sound itself, but because she recognized what it meant. "Someone is looking for you," he said. Elena remained silent. That silence told him everything. "Who are they?" Adrian asked. She looked toward the dark forest behind her. "People who believe I do not have the right to choose my own life." Those words stayed with Adrian. The Alpha King had heard countless complaints from packs across his kingdom. Disputes over territory, leadership, tradition. But this was different. This was someone fighting for something every person deserved. A choice. Adrian removed his coat and offered it to her. Elena looked at it suspiciously. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. For a moment, Adrian had no answer. The honest answer was something he was not ready to say. Because the moment he saw her, something inside him knew she mattered. Instead, he simply said, "Because no one should be forced into a life they never chose." Elena accepted the coat. She did not know that the man standing beside her was the most powerful alpha in the world. Adrian did not know that the woman in front of him carried a secret that could change the future of every pack. But as they walked deeper into the forest together, both of them felt the same impossible truth. Their meeting was not an accident. The journey through Silverpine Forest was quieter than Elena expected. She had prepared herself for anger, questions, or even judgment from the mysterious alpha who found her. Instead, Adrian Blackthorne walked beside her in silence, giving her the space she needed. It was strange. Powerful people usually filled every room with their presence. But this man did not need to prove who he was. The forest seemed to know. The wolves hidden among the trees stayed calm. The wind moved around him like it recognized its own leader. Elena noticed everything, but she said nothing. "You are wondering who I am," Adrian finally said. Elena glanced at him. "Should I be?" A faint look of surprise crossed his face. Most people would already know. She looked ahead. "I spent most of my life being told where to stand and what to do. I did not have much time to study powerful strangers." Adrian understood the meaning behind her words. There was pain there, carefully hidden beneath her calm expression. They reached the edge of a hidden mountain path, where a black vehicle waited beneath the trees. Elena stopped immediately. "You have a driver?" she asked. "You are not a hunter." Adrian looked at her. "No, then who are you?" For a moment, he considered lying. It would be easier. If she knew he was the Alpha King, everything would change. People reacted differently when they knew his title. They became careful. They became afraid. He did not want that from her. "Not yet. My name is Adrian," he said. Elena studied him. She knew he was hiding something. She could feel it. But she also knew he had helped her when he had no reason to. When they arrived at Blackthorn Keep, Elena finally understood that Adrian was not an ordinary alpha. The massive stone fortress stood above the mountain valley, surrounded by hundreds of years of history. Members of the pack bowed as he walked past. Conversation stopped. Eyes followed him. Elena looked at him in disbelief. "You are not just an alpha," she whispered. Adrian did not answer. He did not need to. The room already had. "Your Majesty." The words came from one of the guards, and Elena froze. Alpha King Adrian Blackthorne, the ruler of the Northern Crescent Alliance. The man whose decisions affected every major pack across the region. The same man who had given her his coat in the forest. "You should have told me," Elena said quietly. Adrian looked at her. Would it have changed your answer? She wanted to say yes. She wanted to be angry. But the truth was harder. He had treated her with kindness before she knew his title, before she could see his crown, before she could decide whether to fear him. "I do not know," she admitted. That answer mattered more than she realized. Later that evening, Adrian brought her to a private guest room inside the keep. Not a prison, not a guarded chamber. A room with a warm fireplace, fresh clothes, and a window looking toward the forest where they first met. Elena stood alone, trying to understand what had happened. She had run away from one arrangement only to arrive in the home of the most powerful alpha alive. It felt impossible. But the strangest part was not the castle, not the title, not the crown. It was the feeling she could not explain. The moment Adrian entered the room, the air seemed different. Both of them felt it. That invisible connection. That quiet pull neither wanted to admit. Adrian looked away first. "You need rest," he said. Elena nodded. But before he left, she asked one question. "Why do I feel like you already know something about me?" Adrian stopped at the door. Because he did know something. Something he could not explain. Something ancient. Something that had been silent for years. "I do not know," he answered. But as he walked away, Adrian knew one thing for certain. Elena Whitmore was not just a runaway Omega. She was a secret his kingdom had forgotten. For the first time in years, Adrian Blackthorne found himself avoiding a decision. The Alpha King had faced impossible choices before. He had settled conflicts between powerful packs, carried the responsibility of an entire kingdom, and stood alone when everyone expected him to have all the answers. But Elena Whitmore was different. She was not a political problem to solve. She was not a duty to complete. She was a person who had already been forced to give up too much. The next morning, Elena walked through Blackthorn Keep with cautious curiosity. The fortress was everything she imagined a royal home would be. Massive stone walls, ancient family symbols carved into the halls, pack members moving with respect and discipline. But behind all that power, she noticed something unexpected. The keep felt lonely. "Does anyone actually live here?" Elena asked one of the servants. The woman smiled sadly. "Many people work here, but very few know the king." Elena looked toward the long hallway where Adrian disappeared every morning. She understood that feeling more than she wanted to admit. A person could be surrounded by hundreds and still feel completely alone. Later that day, Adrian invited Elena to the council chamber. He wanted answers about Silver Pine Pack and why an Omega had been pushed into an unwanted arrangement. Several members of his council were already waiting. Their expressions changed the moment Elena entered. Some looked curious. Others looked doubtful. "An unknown Omega cannot simply appear inside the royal keep," one advisor said. Elena remained quiet, but Adrian noticed the way she lowered her eyes. Not from weakness, from years of experience. She was used to being judged before being heard. "She is under my protection," Adrian said calmly. The room became silent. The authority in his voice was impossible to ignore. But Elena surprised everyone when she stepped forward. "I do not need protection without a voice," she said. Adrian looked at her. Even the council members seemed surprised. Elena continued, "I left because people decided my future without asking me. I do not want another place where someone else chooses for me." For a moment, nobody spoke. Adrian felt something shift inside him. Not because she challenged his counsel. Because she reminded him of something he had forgotten. A leader was not someone who controlled every choice. A leader was someone who created a place where others could make their own. After the meeting, Adrian found Elena in the castle garden, studying the plants growing beneath the winter glass house. "You were brave in there," he said. Elena smiled slightly. "I was terrified." Adrian looked surprised. "You did not seem afraid." Being afraid and staying silent are different things. Her answer stayed with him. As they walked through the garden, Adrian noticed something unusual. The flowers Elena touched began to recover from the cold faster than they should have. It was subtle, almost impossible to notice. But Adrian saw it. His expression changed. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. Elena looked at the plants. "Learn what?" Adrian studied her carefully. There was something hidden inside her. Something even she might not fully understand. Before he could ask more, a messenger arrived at the garden entrance with urgent news. A sealed letter from the Northern Archives had been discovered. The message was addressed to the Alpha King. Adrian opened it slowly. His expression changed as he read the words written inside. A forgotten name. A lost bloodline. A warning from the past. Elena Whitmore was not supposed to exist, and someone had been trying to make sure she stayed forgotten. The letter felt heavier than a simple piece of paper should have. Adrian Blackthorne stood inside the Royal Archive chamber, reading the same words again and again, hoping they would somehow change. They did not. A name that had disappeared from every official record. A bloodline removed from pack history. A warning written decades ago by someone who knew exactly what they were hiding. Elena Whitmore. "Where did you find this?" Adrian asked. The royal historian, an elderly wolf named Thomas Reed, adjusted his glasses, and looked uneasy. The Northern Archives were sealed for almost 50 years. This document was hidden behind an old family record. Someone wanted it erased, but they failed. Adrian looked back at the letter. Why would anyone erase Elena's family? Thomas hesitated. Because some truths become dangerous when people in power are afraid of them. Across the castle, Elena had no idea that her entire existence had become the center of a royal mystery. She spent the afternoon helping the keep healers organize supplies. It was something familiar, something simple. After spending her whole life being told she was not important, being useful was the one thing she understood. But Adrian noticed something different when he found her. She was not trying to impress anyone. She was not trying to gain a place beside the throne. She was simply helping because that was who she was. You always do that, Adrian said. Elena looked up. Do what? Help people who cannot give you anything back. She smiled softly. Maybe because I know what it feels like when nobody helps you. The answer stayed with him. Adrian had spent years protecting his kingdom from threats he could see. But Elena reminded him there were wounds created by silence, tradition, and fear. That evening, Adrian finally told her the truth about the letter. Elena listened quietly as he explained that her family name had been connected to an ancient Omega line known as the Heartkeepers. I am not a part of some royal story, Elena said. I am just Elena. Adrian looked at her. That might be exactly why they were afraid of you. She shook her head. People always find a reason to fear what they do not understand. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. You do not understand what this means. If the council learns about your bloodline, they will not see you as a person. They will see you as something that can change the balance of power. Elena's expression became serious. And what do you see? The question caught him off guard. Adrian had faced enemies, negotiations, and impossible choices. But this simple question felt harder than any battle. I see someone who walked into my forest alone because she wanted control over her own life, he said. I see someone who stood in front of my council and spoke when everyone expected her to stay quiet. Elena looked away, unsure how to respond. The connection between them was becoming harder to ignore. The strange pull, the quiet understanding, the feeling that they had crossed paths for a reason. But neither of them wanted to rush towards something they did not fully understand. Not after Elena had spent her entire life being told what she was supposed to do. Before the night ended, another message arrived at Blackthorn Keep. This time, it was from Silverpine Pack. They had discovered where Elena was, and they were demanding that their missing Omega be returned immediately. Adrian read the message in silence. Then he looked toward Elena. The choice was no longer about politics. It was about whether he would follow the old laws of the pack, or create new ones. The message from Silverpine Pack arrived before sunrise. Adrian Blackthorn had expected pressure from the council. He had expected questions from other alpha leaders. But he had not expected the words written in the official request. Return Elena Whitmore immediately. She belongs under Silverpine authority. He read the sentence twice. Not because he did not understand it. Because he could not believe anyone still thought that way. Elena was not a possession. She was not a responsibility to transfer between packs. She was a person who had escaped a life chosen for her. Adrian entered the council chamber with the letter in his hand. The room was already filled with tension. The Silverpine elders claim their arrangement remains valid, one advisor said. They believe the Omega must return to complete the alliance. Adrian looked at him. And what does Elena believe? The advisor paused. That is not the tradition. Those words bothered Adrian more than he expected. For generations, pack leaders had used tradition as an answer whenever they did not want to question their own decisions. But Elena had forced him to see something he had ignored. A system could be old and still be wrong. Later that morning, Adrian found Elena near the glass house. She was packing the few belongings she had brought from Silverpine. He stopped at the doorway. You are leaving. Elena did not turn around immediately. They want me back. I did not say I would send you. She looked at him. But you are the Alpha King. Everyone expects you to follow the rules. Adrian was quiet. Because she was right. His entire life had been built around responsibility. Every decision affected thousands of wolves. Every personal choice carried political consequences. But when he looked at Elena, he did not see a political problem. He saw the person who had reminded him why leadership mattered. I need to ask you something, Adrian said. If you return to Silverpine, what happens? Elena looked down. I become what they planned for me to become. And if you stay? She gave a small, sad smile. Then everyone will believe I manipulated the Alpha King. Adrian hated how quickly she expected blame to fall on her. You did not manipulate me. Elena looked at him carefully. Then why does it feel like everyone already decided I did? Adrian had no easy answer. Because the truth was complicated. The moment Elena entered his life, everything he thought he understood began changing. The pack hierarchy, the traditions, even the way he saw his own role as king. Before he could respond, a royal messenger arrived with unexpected news. Rumors had already spread across the northern packs. Some claimed Elena was dangerous. Others claimed she had used an ancient bloodline to gain influence over Adrian. The story was changing before the truth could even be heard. Elena stood silently as she listened. Adrian saw the disappointment in her eyes. Not anger, not surprise, disappointment. Because deep down, she had hoped things would be different. I should go, she said. Adrian stepped forward. Elena. She stopped. Why? She asked softly. Why do you care what happens to me? Adrian looked at her, searching for the right words. The easy answer was duty. The safe answer was protection. But neither was true. Because when everyone else saw an Omega they could control, he said, I saw someone who was brave enough to walk away. Elena looked away, hiding her emotions. But before either of them could say more, the doors opened. A member of Adrian's inner guard entered with urgent news. Your Majesty, we found the source of the rumors. Adrian turned. Who started them? The guard hesitated. Someone inside the royal court. The room went silent. The threat was no longer outside the kingdom. It was already inside the walls. The truth had always been dangerous inside a kingdom built on secrets. Adrian Blackthorne stood in the royal chamber, looking at the report in his hands. The rumors spreading through the northern packs were not random. They were carefully created. Someone wanted Elena Whitmore to look like a threat before anyone had the chance to hear her story. Who has access to the old archives? Adrian asked. The guard lowered his head. Only members of the royal council, the historians, and a few senior officials. Adrian already knew what that meant. The person behind this was not an outsider. It was someone who understood the kingdom. Someone who knew exactly how to use fear. When Adrian returned to the garden, Elena was still there. She stood beside the frozen flowers, quietly touching the leaves that refused to bloom. You found them, she said. Adrian stopped. Found who? Elena looked at him. The people trying to turn everyone against me. He was surprised by how quickly she understood. How long have you known? Since the first rumor reached the keep. Adrian frowned. And you said nothing? Elena gave a small smile. Because I have learned something about powerful people. They usually believe problems disappear if nobody talks about them. That answer bothered him because it sounded like something she had learned from experience. You should have told me. Elena looked away. Why? So you could defend me because I am important to your kingdom? Adrian stepped closer. No, his voice became quieter. Because you matter. The words surprised both of them. Adrian was not a man who spoke without thinking. Every sentence from the Alpha King usually carried strategy and purpose. But this time, it was simply the truth. Elena looked at him for a long moment. She wanted to believe him. But trust was not something she could give away easily anymore. You are the first person who has asked what I want, she said. Do you understand how strange that feels? Adrian did not answer immediately. He did understand. More than she knew. As the Alpha King, everyone asked what he would do. What decision he would make. What sacrifice he would accept. Nobody asked what he wanted either. Before they could continue, the royal council summoned Adrian. The meeting was not a request. It was a challenge. Inside the chamber, several leaders demanded Elena be removed from the keep until the rumors were investigated. A ruler cannot allow personal feelings to influence judgment, one council member said. Adrian remained calm. You are correct. The room relaxed slightly. Then he continued. That is why I will judge this situation based on truth, not fear. Nobody expected that answer. The council argued that Elena's bloodline could create instability. Adrian listened until they finished. Then he asked one question. Has anyone here spoken to Elena as a person? Silence filled the room. No one answered. Because the truth was obvious. They had studied her. They had discussed her. They had made decisions about her. But almost nobody had actually listened to her. Adrian returned to Elena after the meeting. He found her preparing to leave again. You still plan to go, he said. Elena nodded. If I stay, they will use me to attack you. Adrian shook his head. You think leaving protects me. Does it not? He looked at her. No. It only means the people who created this lie get what they wanted. Elena stopped. For years, she had survived by disappearing, by staying quiet, by making herself smaller. But Adrian was asking her to do the opposite, to stand where everyone could see her. I do not know how to fight this, she admitted. Adrian answered without hesitation. Then do not fight alone. For the first time, Elena saw something beyond the crown. Not a king, not an alpha, just a man choosing to stand beside her. But neither of them knew the greatest test was still coming. Because the person who betrayed the royal court was about to reveal a secret that could change everything. The Great Hall of Blackthorn Keep had never felt so quiet. Hundreds of pack members gathered beneath the ancient banners of the Northern Crescent Alliance, waiting for the Alpha King to speak. But this time, Adrian Blackthorn was not standing there to announce a victory or settle a dispute. He was standing there because One Omega had been judged before anyone truly knew her. Elena Whitmore stood beside him, feeling every eye in the room. A few weeks earlier, she would have lowered her head and wished for the moment to end. But something had changed. She was still nervous. She was still afraid. But she was no longer willing to disappear. Adrian stepped forward. Today, we will address the rumors surrounding Elena Whitmore. A voice from the council interrupted. Your Majesty, this is exactly why she should not be here. The kingdom cannot allow emotions to influence royal decisions. Adrian looked toward the speaker. Then let us discuss facts. The room became silent. A series of documents were placed on the table. Records from Silverpine Pack. Old archive notes. Reports that showed Elena's family history had been intentionally removed from official records. The truth was finally coming into the light. But before Adrian could continue, another figure stepped forward. Lord Marcus Vale, one of the oldest members of the Royal Council. The records are incomplete, Marcus said. They prove nothing. Elena looked at him carefully. Something about his confidence felt familiar. Not because she knew him, because she had seen that kind of confidence before. The confidence of someone who believed nobody would question them. Adrian noticed her expression. Elena, he asked quietly. She took a breath. He knows more than he is saying. The entire hall turned toward her. Marcus smiled. An Omega's suspicion is not evidence. Those words were meant to silence her. Instead, they reminded everyone why this conversation mattered. Elena stepped forward. That is exactly the problem. Her voice carried across the room. Everyone keeps deciding what my voice is worth before I even speak. The hall went still. Adrian watched her with quiet respect. She was not speaking like someone asking for approval. She was speaking like someone who had finally remembered her own value. Elena continued. My entire life, people told me my role was to support others, to accept decisions made by stronger voices. But if my bloodline is important, if my existence changes your politics, then you should at least have the courage to speak to me directly. Nobody answered, because she was right. The same people who feared her power had never bothered to understand her. Then Marcus revealed the final piece of his argument. The Heartkeeper bloodline has always been connected to royal leadership. If she stays near the throne, every pack will question your authority. Adrian looked at Elena. For a moment, the entire kingdom waited for his response. This was the choice everyone expected him to make. The safe choice. The political choice. But Adrian remembered the woman who walked into his forest because she refused to let others control her future. Then let them question, Adrian said. A wave of shock moved through the hall. A kingdom built on fear will never be strong. A leader does not prove power by controlling others. A leader proves it by protecting their freedom. Elena looked at him, realizing he was not defending her because of a bond or an ancient prophecy. He was defending the person she was. But before the moment could settle, a messenger rushed into the hall with a sealed document. His face was pale. Your Majesty, we found the original record of the Heartkeeper line. Adrian opened it slowly. The final page contained a single message written decades ago. Not a warning, not a threat, a prophecy. The Heartkeeper will not serve the crown. The crown will be tested by the Heartkeeper. Everyone looked toward Elena, and for the first time, the kingdom understood something important. She was never meant to stand beneath the throne. She was meant to challenge it. The message written in the ancient record changed everything. For generations, the Northern Crescent Alliance believed the crown existed to command. The Alpha King stood above the pack, carrying the final decision, the final responsibility, and the final authority. But the words hidden inside the archive revealed something different. The crown was never meant to rule without question. It was meant to serve those it protected. Adrian Blackthorne read the message again in silence. The heartkeeper will not serve the crown. The crown will be tested by the heartkeeper. Those words were not a threat. They were a reminder. A reminder that power without humility could become nothing more than another form of control. The council chamber remained silent as everyone waited for Adrian's decision. Lord Marcus Vale lowered his eyes, realizing the years of manipulation were finally being uncovered. The missing records, the false rumors, the attempt to erase Elena's family history. Everything connected back to a simple fear. Fear of losing control. Adrian turned toward Elena. For the first time since they met, he did not look at her as someone he needed to protect. He looked at her as someone whose choice mattered. "What do you want?" he asked. The question was simple, but for Elena, it carried more weight than any royal announcement. No one had asked her that before. Not when her future was arranged. Not when her role was decided. Not when others spoke for her. She looked around the hall filled with powerful alphas, advisors, and leaders. Then she looked back at Adrian. "I want a life where my worth is not decided before people know my name." The room stayed quiet. Elena continued. "I do not want a crown because of my bloodline. I do not want respect because of an old prophecy. I want to earn my place because of who I am." Adrian felt the truth of those words. The woman in front of him had never wanted power. That was exactly why she deserved to have a voice. In the weeks that followed, Blackthorn Keep changed. The council rules were rewritten. Pack leaders were required to listen before making decisions that affected their members. Omegas were no longer treated as silent parts of political agreements. The old traditions did not disappear overnight. Change never happened that easily. But for the first time, people believed change was possible. Elena chose to stay at Blackthorn Keep, not because of destiny, not because of a bond she did not understand. She stayed because Adrian gave her something she had never been given before. A choice. One evening, they returned to the forest where everything began. The same trees, the same quiet paths, but Elena was no longer running. Adrian looked around and smiled slightly. "You know, when I found you here, I thought you were the person who needed saving." Elena looked at him. "And now?" Adrian watched the forest around them. "Now I think you were the person who reminded me what saving was supposed to mean." Elena smiled. The world still expected the Alpha King to be the strongest person in the kingdom. But Adrian had learned that true strength was not about standing above everyone else. It was about standing beside them. Their story was never about a king finding someone to complete his crown. It was about a woman who found her voice and a leader who was brave enough to listen. Because sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the person who changes everything. And sometimes the greatest responsibility of a king is not protecting his throne. It is remembering who the throne exists to protect.